Spirit Speaks radio virtual style. I am Joseph Tittel, aka Spiritman. For those of you who are viewing this on YouTube, subscribe down below, hit the bell, hit the all so that you get notifications for future events and future things. You can also find Spiritman merchandise down below on the YouTube page as well, or on my Teespring shop until you're dropped. Today, I'm going to tell a story about my life. It's a long story. It's got many parts to this story, and I'm only going to tell one part to this story. This is going to be a part to my story that I wasn't planning on telling until I wrote my autobiography, which I plan on having out by 2022. I plan on getting that written next year, out by 2022. Hey, maybe late next year. You never know. Whatever universe wants to happen and spirit wants to happen, that's the way it's going to happen. But the story is an important story to me. The story is the story of a life, and my life to this day that may not have existed. I could have very well been dead and would have been dead. We have soul contracts, all of us, very detailed, very complex, very fully orchestrated soul contracts before we come into this life. Many of us have exit points, multiple exit points, depending on situations, soul contracts with other people, animals, so forth. And the goal is to bypass those exit points and get to the final exit point and reach that level of joy and happiness that we're all meant and deserve to reach. But Spirit says less than 1% of humanity ever reaches that goal. I say it's like a TV show. We're all here to get that golden emerald, but most of us don't even leave with a pebble or a rock, let alone a gemstone mineral or a golden emerald. So the story goes back a long time, and it comes into the year 2016, so 4 years ago. And it's actually, we're in August, so it's 4 years, 4 months ago, 44, that I identified a demon attachment. And I didn't identify it. Actually, one of my dear friends who does amazing shamanic work identified it. But I got to go back and rewind the story 15 years prior, when I was in an accident and suffered from major migraines. Doctors had me on Vicodin. They tried me on all different kinds of migraine medications, which none of them worked. And for all y'all, what actually cured my migraines was actually a chiropractor. That actually had to do with my neck and something in my neck that would cause my migraines. I used to get debilitating migraines. I'll try that. And that's when the doctors and the pill-pushing doctor that I had at the time started pushing me on opiates. Vicodin was the first one. And I'm trying to remember what year it was. It had to be 2005, maybe even 2003. About 2004, 2005. And that's when I met, and I used to go to the clubs because I loved to dance in Philadelphia. And sometimes the after hours clubs and dance till the sunlight comes up. Things we could do when we're young. And then I met beautiful Seth. Seth was gorgeous. He had a beautiful complexion. He looked like a model. We couldn't go anywhere without people stopping him and complimenting him. That's how gorgeous Seth was. And Seth and I dated for a while. And this is after I moved back from my first partnership in New Jersey, and I moved to back into Levittown, Pennsylvania. And I built an apartment in my father's basement until I later on bought that house, sold it, and moved here to Arizona. Seth, I caught in the room doing crystal meth. That instantly brought our relationship to an end because I was not dealing with that. I was celebrating my own sobriety at the time, and I just was not dealing with that. And again, the addiction that came from opiates was something that was pushed from doctors. And it started off with Vicodin, then it went to Percocet, and then I was in another accident, had severe back issues within those years. But I'll get back to Seth later because he's a big part of the story that comes to the end of the story and the demon attachment. But he was beautiful. It was sad. I always knew that he would end up down a very dark road, especially seeing him and catching him doing crystal meth, because that stuff, I mean, there's lots of drugs that are the devil, but man, that is the devil. And it's sad because it really hits the gay community very, very hard. It's one of the big reasons for the increase in HIV and AIDS in the gay community, because of these people that party on crystal meth. I don't get it, man. This shit is nasty, awful. And so that ended my relationship with Seth. Still worked and played, not worked, but I danced in the clubs. Actually, I did. I actually worked in the clubs too in Philadelphia. And then I went down and got in an accident. You know, my life progressed, and the doctors progressed on putting me on higher doses of opiates and morphine for years. It was think about it, 2003, 2004, all the way to 2016, over a decade. And over that decade, it became just a part of taking your vitamins every day, 3 times a day, 4 times a day, to the point that they don't work anymore. When they don't work anymore, you go onto the streets and you find them when they do work. And that's what leads a lot of people to heroin addiction, because heroin's cheaper, apparently. I don't know. Won't touch it, never touched it. It just was an oath I made to myself after seeing the movie Basketball Diaries when I was young. I was like, I'll never touch that shit. Thank God I didn't, because I definitely would not made it past my death date exit point in 2016. But I did make it past that exit point. Thank God for that. Being medium, being a psychic, people are like, oh, you have such a gift, you're such a gift. But they never think of the aspect of it being such a curse at the same time. The visions I've had, things I've seen aren't always pleasurable, aren't always fun. So, and then doctors pushing prescriptions down your throat just helps you to block out the stuff that's the curse aspect of being the medium. And I knew that Seth would never make it far. I never knew and saw him afterwards, maybe a couple times in the club. And the last I heard, he went to Florida. That was the last I heard about him. Then I stopped going to clubs and met somebody else and went into an 8-year-long relationship, not realizing the situation until I had my own vision. I've had several visions of people in their funerals. The first one I had was of my niece, Rhiannon. I was on the phone with my sister. She called to tell me that my niece was diagnosed with cancer. She was only 13, 14 years old, 14, 13. And as soon as she told me that on the phone, I had a vision of my niece laying out in a funeral, laid out in a casket in a beautiful, gorgeous blue dress. Freaked me out a bit. I tried what I could from my end. And, my sister, of course, family tried. She went through 2 years of struggling through chemo, remission, all kinds of crap. And then she died at the age of 15, right before her birthday, right before her 16th birthday. I think she died in January or February. Her birthday was in March. She didn't make it to her 16th birthday. I will never forget that funeral as long as I live. I remember going to the funeral and walking up to the casket, and there she was, laid out in a gorgeous blue dress. Surprised I didn't pass out. So demon attachments are more common than you would ever imagine. So is cult abuse. A lot of people don't know what that is. Cult, C-U-L-T, cult, or occult abuse, satanic ritual abuse. And I learned that when I worked with ayahuasca in Peru, when I saw that within my family hereditary ancestry, which is disturbing to me, was disturbing to me, and that vision will never come out of my head. And it's shocking where it lied in my family in the past. Not in these generations, but in my grandparents, great-grandparents' generations. And then I was telling my friend Rick, who does amazing work. He is a Sikh. He's just amazing. And he does amazing shamanic energy work, Kundalini yoga, everything. He's just amazing. And I remember telling him the story about ayahuasca and the whole cult abuse and the satanic ritual and my family ancestry. And he is an expert in that field. And I didn't know that at the time. A psychologist who's an expert in that field and well known for it. I'm like, how did I not know that? I'm like, dude, how did I not know that? How did you not ever tell me that? I guess it's just not something you talk about and brag about. He said, and we were on the beach when he was telling me the story at the Jersey Shore at Asbury Park. And then he said, take a look around you, all the people on the beach. There were thousands of people on the beach, hundreds of people anyway. And he said I think it's one out of five, or maybe it was 1 out of 10. Probably 1 out of 10. He said 1 out of every 10 people on this beach is a victim of cult abuse. He said that's how popular and that's how common it is. It's bigger than you would ever imagine. Like I say all the time, and you hear me in my videos, Satan, Lucifer, his army is bigger than you'd ever imagine. This is the hell that they have created that we live upon. So with that, I'll go back and rewind to December, I think it was December 2015, when I had a vision of my own funeral. And that was disturbing. I was like, I don't want to die. Life is pretty challenging and all, but there's so many beautiful, amazing things about life and the earth and, being here. It's an honor to be here, we voluntarily came here, you know, it was our choice to come to this earth school in the universe. What is told to be the hardest school in the universe is the earth school. And so I dug really deep in figuring out what it was, because the vision I had in 2015 was to come to play in October of 2016. So I had less than a year to figure it out and figure how, and if at all, I could shift this, which I knew I could, because I always knew that I had different potential exit points in this earth. Didn't know the exact ages. And that's when Spirit told me my exit points. They showed me my exit point, and they showed me 3 exit points. And I will bypass the second one too. I believe what I needed to do, because I'm now here in Arizona. I quit smoking. So that was a big part of my second exit point, which would happen in less than a decade from now. And my final exit point will be in my 80s. That's the one I will get to. But when they first showed me this, I'm like, I don't want to know that. What the hell are you showing me that for? I don't want to know that. I don't want to see that. Seeing yourself laying in a casket 11 months later in a vision, let me tell you, it's disturbing as hell. That's the part where people say you have such a gift. That's the curse aspect of the gift. Who the hell wants to? I saw that with friends, and I knew it was going to come to be. Saw it with family. I knew it was going to come to be. But I also knew, again, deep down inside, that there had to be a reason or a way for me to prevent that. I was on a mission. And I suffered severe back pain, severe lower back pain, which every disease, every illness has a specific deep-rooted emotional cause. So all y'all out there that know, and even though it was from an accident, and my back would go on in and out all the time. You know, the medication works, but I still didn't work enough for what the doctor gave me. And then they started cutting people back on medication because of government guidelines. And then what do? You seek it out elsewhere. And then you end up with problems with finances and money. That's what addiction does. So the emotional cause of lower back pain is a lack of financial support, fear of money and finances. So even to this day, usually I'll feel if my back's about to go out, and I check right in with myself with money, finances, and financial support. And there's always a fear about it at that point in time. And then I do the affirmations and I knock myself out of it. But I still, again, had to get my body back into the right element and right shape to get past my back pain. Because by this point, and by January of 2016, I knew deep down inside first that the opiates and prescription medications had everything in the world to do with my death in October of 2016. So I dug deep. And then that was a deep knowing, but not a conscious knowing. And then I consciously knew. And then that's when I started to do yoga, because I wanted to get my back into shape first. You can't just stop an addiction until you feed and heal the aspects of that addiction that are being numbed up. And it's all emotional too. So I signed up for yoga. I started going to the gym, started walking every day, started to get into shape. I was on a mission. And this was February, March, or January, February of 2016. I got into really good shape. Went to yoga 3 days a week. I started going and getting a massage once a week. And getting myself into a place where I felt like I can kill all the pharmaceutical drugs and not be in severe pain, and that I can continue to be healthy and not be in severe pain. And then working with affirmations again for finances and money, because the lower back is related to that. And that all comes from Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life. It's been proven. And I know just from my own experience with the back pain and all, even though it started from an accident, it's still, there's that outline when your back goes out. My back hurt all the time, but when your back goes out and you're like, can't get out of bed, those things, yeah, that was how it was for me. It wasn't like that all the time. It hurt all the time, but then it would go out from time to time. Knock on wood, man. Whew, I don't want to have no back outage anymore. I think I had one when I first moved here in October, but it wasn't so bad. And again, it was, getting everything back into alignment with moving here. So of course it would make sense. Finances and money is one of our biggest fears. Why do so many people have problems with their lower back? And I know some of you watching this and listening to this that don't watch the replay of this are going to be like, oh my God, yeah, whoa, I got lower back problems. Yoga was probably the biggest cure for that. which I haven't done since I've been here, and I got to get into yoga. I've been saying that to myself. As soon as I reload, I'm getting ready to move again, I will get back into my yoga, get back to the gym, get back onto that process. So it comes to, I started going to a pharmacy for my prescriptions every month. It was a newer pharmacy. It was a local, small pharmacy, because I am very against supporting big pharmaceuticals and big drugstores. Like, I'm not even going to say the names of them, but you know the names of them. The ones they jam down our throat that are on every corner like a Starbucks. I refuse to support those places. And I am all about supporting small business owners. Being a small business owner, I want to support other small business owners. So I always seek out that first. And when I saw that this place opened up, I'm like, I'm going to go there. And it was Pennsbury Pharmacy in Fairless Hills, Pennsylvania. And I met Ken, the owner, who I admired so much because he was the owner. He just started this business. He was the owner and the pharmacist. Kicked butt back there. Eventually, he had a young lady that worked for him. He probably, I would think by now, has enough success with that he may have another pharmacist working for him. Or maybe not. He's dedicated. Same age as me. I used to go in there, always be playing 80s music. And it was just fun. He would crack me up. And he was great. Loved Ken. I went in there one day to get my prescription filled, and I said, Ken, I really need to get off this. Can you help me? Funny you mentioned that. Mr. Tittel, he used to say. I'm like, Ken, just call me Joe. Mr. Tittel. He's like, my friend happens to be one of the top detox doctors on the East Coast. People come from Hollywood to go to him to get detoxed. I'm like, cool, Ken, hook me up with his phone number. I'll give him a call. And I called Dr. Yee from the Newtown Behavioral Health, Newtown Behavioral Health. And I called him, and he called me on the phone. And this was the thing that was shocking to me, is that Dr. Yee called me on the phone and interviewed me literally for an hour. What doctor does that? He was a psychiatrist. He interviewed me for an hour before he would even decide whether or not I could come in for an appointment. Didn't charge for that interview over the hour, and decided to let me come in to see him. And when I went in to see him the first time, talked to him, told him about my spiritual path, and told him my stories, told him about everything. He's like, normally, he's like, you need an inpatient. I'm like, Ken, I mean, Dr. Yee, I can't do that. I cannot do that because I have a dog, I have a house, and I have to pay my bills. And I have nobody to take care of that for me. And I remember he kept like stopping, thinking, deep thought. And he said, normally I would never do this for anybody. And I would say, no, you need inpatient. And I would like tell you, good luck if you don't agree. He said, but because of your spiritual path and, that you're doing the yoga and you're going to the gym and you're doing all these things to better off your health and your back, he's like, I believe in my heart that you can do this, and I'm going to help you. And he did. And I did a lot of research on opiate addiction and the withdrawal symptoms and all that, and what to do. And he had a program that he called comfort meds, that when you did the dive, he would give you these comfort meds, which I couldn't even imagine what it would have been like without that, because it was like nothing. And I remember preparing for this. And I remember going into his office, and he said, you ready to go do this? Like this weekend? I'm like, dude, I'm like booked out for 2 weeks with clients. I'm like, you got to kind of prepare me for this. And at first he got hesitant, thinking I wasn't serious. I'm like, no, seriously. Like, I have clients. You need to give me notice so I can like reschedule people. He's like, because you need to take a whole week off. So I realigned it. I think we waited another week, and he did wean down my dosage. I wasn't taking the morphine anymore, just the oxycodone. And he weaned me down, and I think I was down to 10 milligram tablets. I think that's how far he got me down, 3 or 4 times a day, which wasn't really enough because I was taking 30 milligrams 6 times a day, not to mention the MS Cotton morphine. And so I was told by Spirit specifically that on the 3rd day of my detox, I'm pretty sure it's the third day or 4th day. It might have even been the 7th day, but whatever it is, I was told by Spirit that I had to make an appointment to see my friend Rick for shamanic energy work, that it was a must that I do that after 3 days. I know it was after. You have to be detoxed for 72 hours. You need to have that appointment with him within a week. And it was, I think it was the 7th day that I went to go see him. And I will tell you that shit is nothing to mess around with. That stuff is like the devil. That withdrawal, And I did that by myself in my house, locked up for a week. The first 3 days was hell. I was awake for 4 days straight. The worst part for me is, I used to, when people said that they had RLS, restless leg syndrome, I'd be like, that's a bunch of BS. That can't be real. Well, yeah, let me tell you, I found out karma the hard way with that, because I felt literally like a truck ran up and down over my legs. That's literally what it felt like. Like every bone was cracked in my legs from the hips down. It was awful. The pain was awful. Luckily for me, I didn't get all the other stuff that comes with that opiate withdrawal, the dysentery, because again, I did research. So I took a handful of diarrhea medicine. I took I think 10 tablets. So, and then he gave me his comfort meds to help with the RLS, which I'm like, that didn't even work, but I probably did, I'm sure. And I remember it must have been 48 hours into detox, the worst aspect, 48 hours afterward. I was crawled up in my bed like a baby, rocking back and forth in tears, in severe pain. And I hear something whisper in my ear, you're going to get in your car right now, and you're going to drive to Trenton, New Jersey, which was like 15 minutes away from me. And you're going to get a bag of heroin and you'll feel better. And first of all, I would never do that. I told you that earlier. It's just, I would never do that. And there was no way I was driving a car. My legs hurt so bad, it felt like a truck ran them over and they were broken. So that wasn't happening either. But I guess, this thing would have drove the car, because when I looked up, and I swear to you, like I shit you not, I saw 9 feet tall, bent down, hoovered over in the corner of my room, the blackest, darkest, evil thing that I've ever seen in my life, with my eyes. And then instantly, because it whispered in my ear, bent down. And this thing was so big, the ceiling was 7.5 feet tall. This thing was bigger than the ceiling. So it was bent down, hoovered over in the room in the corner. Instantly, my mother showed up and my niece showed up in spirit. And then these white beings that to this day, I'll probably put them in my picture, have some artist draw it for me in my book when I do my autobiography. They were white beings, and they were 8 feet tall. They were about 7 feet tall. They were almost to the top of the ceiling. There were 7 of them that surrounded my bed, and they were holding hands. But they were outlines. They had no features. They were pure white light. They almost looked like alien. Pure white light, long arms, long fingers. Everything was long, elongated face, but no face. It was all white. And they were just tall white beings surrounded the bed holding hands. And then an angel came up behind me and wrapped me in its wings, which I found out later was the Egyptian goddess Isis, who's actually tattooed on my left calf to honor her, whispered in my ear, you're not going nowhere, we got you. I just remember I lost it emotionally. I just was probably crying like a little kid, like bad, when you're like, I can't even breathe. It was freaky. It was scary. It was wild. It was wild to see those white beings and my mom and them all show up, and Isis wrapped me in the wings and be like, you ain't going nowhere, we got you. It was powerful. So on 72 hours, I think it was day 3, I went back to see Dr. Yee. I don't know how I drove the car. And that's when he put me on 1 milligram, just 1 milligram, Subutex, not Suboxone, because he's like I did my research too. And this is how awesome Dr. Yee is. He's like, that stuff, he's like, that's bad. He's like, that's harder to get off of. He's like, I'm putting you on the very smallest dose possible of Subutex, and you're only going to take it for, I think it was 14 days, and then you're going to get off of that. It might have been 30 days, because I remember he told me to take a week off to stop taking the Subutex. And I did. And I had absolutely no withdrawal symptoms of the Subutex whatsoever. But here's where the story gets creepy. This is where the demon attachment comes in. I went to see my friend Rick for my session. I was feeling great. I was clean for 7 days, off that medication, still taking Subutex, but, and I didn't take any that particular day before going to see him, because Spirit directed me to make sure that wasn't in my system. And I've been to Rick, and I've been to other friends that do shamanic energy work 12 times in that 15-year hiatus of being on pain medications. So it's interesting how the story goes. So when they do the shamanic energy work, it's somebody that's true and does it true and knows what they're doing. First, they put you on the table, and they give you like energy, like almost like Reiki, but it's not Reiki. and they do energy work with you. And then when he's done doing the energy work, he says to me, is there anything that came up in your mind that you feel is important to talk to me about? And I did have something in my mind, but I didn't feel like it was important to tell him. This is where Seth comes back into the point. And that was 12 years prior that I dated him. He popped in my mind when I was laying on that table and Rick was doing the energy work on me. And I remember like having a vision of him. And like I said, he was just such a gorgeous man, such a gorgeous guy. And I remember I said to myself in that state, I wonder whatever happened to Seth. And I hear this dark voice, this demonic voice come on and say, we killed him a long time ago. I was like, oh, shit. And I'm like, I kind of knew that would happen with him. I knew he was heading down that road doing crystal meth. But that confirmed. And I didn't tell Rick that because, he says, you get any thoughts or feelings that you want to share? I didn't think it was important. Then they go into their first journey, their shamanic journey. They drum. He drums. He goes into meditation and he finds out what's going on. He said, so I have this whole thing that I'm thinking that you have a possession from the poppy spirit. Because many of you may not know, there's a spirit of everything. There's a spirit of the flower behind me. Each flower has a spirit. There's a spirit of the rock, the crystal, the land, the tree. And there's the spirit of the poppy flower, of course. And he says, I'm thinking you got a possession by the poppy flower, and I'm going to go in, and break your possession with this poppy flower. I'm like, poppy flowers are 9 feet tall. I didn't tell him any of that about the bedroom, by the way, either. I told him nothing about what happened to me. Because once we got in, we had to get the work done, and I didn't tell him any of the story. He didn't even know about Seth, even though we've been friends forever. We were disconnected at that point, so he didn't know any of that. And so he says he drops into shamanic journey, and he's in a field of poppy flowers. And he says, and then I'm thinking again that the poppy spirit's going to come, and I'm going to have to do a depossession of the poppy spirit. He's like, oh, the poppy spirit came to me and yelled at me and says, I'm not dark. I'm like you. I'm 50% light, 50% dark. All beings, all things on this planet are 50% light, 50% dark. He's like, and I'm not dark. He's like, people use me for dark and plug into the dark, but I'm not dark. I'm like you. And then he says, I look across the field. And this is where I got really freaky. I got goosebumps. And across the field of poppy flowers is this tall, black, dark, evil thing about 9 to 10 feet tall. And I'm like thinking to myself, oh shit, that was the thing in my bedroom. Oh my God. So yeah, 10 feet tall, 9 feet tall. And then he says, I saw this beautiful young man standing next to it. He had a beautiful skin, olive complexion, and he looked like a model. And I was like, oh my God, that's Seth. He just described Seth to the T. And I didn't tell him any of that. And he's like, so basically, long story short, that was the thing that was possessing. He knew nothing about the demon across the field and who that young man was. He had no idea about that. And then they go and they do the work, whatever work needs to be done. And he said, and this demon was so dark, so hard that he had a hard time getting it to go, getting it to die. Because that's the first thing after the whole session was done. I'm like, dude, is this thing going to come after me again? Like seriously, is this thing going to come after me again? He's like, no, it's dead. I'm like, thank God. And his allies, which I teach my students, we have allies. There's a whole bunch of them on my altar behind me. You see the owl, the vulture, a bunch of them. His ally, I think it was the panther. I think it was a panther or a cougar or something that helped him take down this demon and kill it. And then afterwards, this is what he says to me. Because after your whole session, they sit down and they go over everything in all their notes because they write everything down in their journal. And he says, so this thing, he's like, it's been attached to you for over a decade. He said, and, he said probably about 10 years ago, which was about right, 10 to 12 years ago. He said, you met somebody at a club. I met Seth at a club. He's like, and you had a relationship with him and you had sex with him. He said that demon was actually attached to the person that you had this relationship with, and it wanted you more because it saw your potential on the planet, what you are here to do, and it wanted to take you down and take you out. And this is where it gets the creepiest. He says, if you didn't come here today, he said it could be a couple weeks, couple months. He said, but definitely by October 2016, Which when he said that, I'm like, oh my God, what's he going to say? He said, definitely by October 2016, you would have relapsed and been dead. And this thing would have killed you because that's what it was gold. And it almost had you. And it was almost going to take you down. And that's when I found out about dark demon attachments the hard way. I've had other stuff when I was younger, another incident, but nothing like this one. But this thing was out to kill me. And it almost succeeded. So when you see these people go on these mass shootings, do this crazy shit, and we call it schizophrenia, mental illness, and they all say the same thing. The voices in my head told me to do it. That is demonic attachments. They are demons that are attached to those people. And the voices they are hearing are the demons telling them to do it, to a point that they are in possession, because these demons can actually begin to possess people. I don't know how this thing didn't possess me being a medium and doing the work that I did, but it probably would have. Elric never really actually said, he said you could have relapsed and been dead, but he said it might not necessarily have been that. This thing was going to kill you. A lot of times when these things are big and dark like that, they don't just take you down. They want you to take down others with them. That's why you see a lot of these mass shootings and people commit suicide. That's how common it is. Addiction. What I've learned about addiction is that, and it doesn't always have to be like my story. It's not always that. These demons and these attachments come in all different forms, all different sizes, all different strengths. It's like medication. They come in all different strengths. And people go to rehab, right? They go out, they go into a halfway house. And, somewhere between the point of the halfway house or the point that they go home is usually when they relapse. And when it comes to opiates and heroin, those ones die almost every time, 95% of the time. Why is that? And what I learned for the future healing centers that we have for addiction is that there's such deep levels that have to be healed. Like, me going to Dr. Yee is one thing, but I had to go to a psychotherapist as a life coach to help me through emotions, to make sure that I cleared every aspect of my life, because I was determined that I was not going to go back, which I did. And then it happened again, not a demon attachment, but it's good and clean and good to go. And with the system that I've discovered for specifically opiates and a lot of addictions, it rewires your brain. It rewires your brain. And I had scientists from Russia that studied the brains of opiate addiction for 30 years. And she shows the slices of the brain and how the pharmaceutical drugs, not just opiates, but many of them, rewire your brain. Your brain's a computer system to the point that you can never stop. You will always, always go back, especially with heroin and opiates. And you see it all the time. They always go back. They never can stop forgetting about it. It's a fight every day. You hear that with people that are in Alcoholics Anonymous and other NA or AA, that every day is a fight. Every day is a fight and battle to not go back. It's because their brain was rewired. You have to wire it back again. And there are methods to do that that I'm not going to get into today. But I rewired my brain. Thank God. And the thought of that never even popped up in my head again. Never. And it's been years. Thank goodness. I won't return. I already have it. Like, if anything happens to me, they are not allowed to give me that stuff. Do not put that shit in my body. I don't care. I'll get through the pain. I'll manage. I'll put some Motrin or something. So that is the story. And again, when people go into rehab and they come out, they usually have something attached to them. Or it's not always that. Sometimes it's childhood trauma that they never work through. It's a whole level of things, actually. A whole level of things energetically, emotionally, that gets us into the physical. Everything starts at the bottom, the soil where you plant your seeds, the fertile fields, and you plant your seed into that field. That is the energy aspect. That's where it all begins. And then a little water, that seed will begin to sprout. That becomes the emotional aspect. That seed will grow and grow and grow through adulthood, and then grow beautiful flowers and fruits and vegetables. That is the physical. So in order to grow a great harvest of fruit and vegetables, you have to make sure that the soil, the energy, is clear and clean, and the emotion working through that growth is totally worked through. Otherwise, you get sour vegetables or no vegetables or flowers at all. And that's basically how it works. It's spirit, mind, and body. Spirit is the energy, mind is the emotions, all lead to the body and to the physical. So sometimes these people that go to rehab halfway house, they go home, and sometimes it's not attached to them. Spirits, ghosts, earthbound spirits, demons, dark entities, all of them attach to either people, places, or things for all different reasons. That's why we do, smudging your house is one thing, but it won't get rid of something dark. The house I lived in back in Levittown, because you're emotionally attached to it. Like I couldn't get a demon off of somebody I was dating last year, year before, even though I knew there was something there in the house, in the chair. And I went there, but we were too emotionally connected, so I couldn't get rid of it. So I had to have another friend that does shamanic work to go to the house and do shamanic house clearing. And she said, dude, there was a demon in that chair upstairs. I'm like, I knew it. I freaking knew it. I'm like, I couldn't get it because we were emotionally attached. So I also said to Rick at the end of my session, I'm like, so, I've been to you before. I've had a lot of work done. He's like, yeah, I know you have. I'm like, how come none of you people saw it? How come none of you people were able to identify this back in the day? He said, that's the key. They feed off of different things. They feed off of different energy. This demon was feeding off of the opiates. The more I took, the stronger it got. So chances are, he said, you probably came and had work done and you probably took your medicine in the morning, or maybe even right before you came. I'm like, yeah, probably. He's like, therefore, it fed it so much that it was so tricky. He kept calling this demon the trickster, the magician, the Houdini of demons. And he said, it tricked everybody. It was able to hide from all of us. He's like, no matter what shaman, what person you went to did shamanic work, he's like, they would have never saw it if you were taking that medicine. That's why Spirit said, 7 days after your detox, you must have this appointment. You must do it then, because there was nothing in my system for it to feed off of anymore. It couldn't hide anymore. And that's why it bent over in my bedroom and wanted me to go drive to Trenton, New Jersey to buy heroin, because it knew that it could be dead soon. Because, if I have a soul contract and it shows that I could be dead in October and this thing's going to make sure it happens, I'm sure that they have soul contracts too of some sort. I'm guessing. I really don't know. Don't really want to know. But that's a dead-ass demon. Going back to my house in Levittown, there was one in the basement in the house, and it was there throughout my whole childhood. Never knew it. Never knew it was there. Until not long before I sold the house and had a clearing done. I didn't do it myself because, again, you're too emotionally connected to your own house. My dog knew it was down that basement because we would let her out, and there were two doors, the door to the basement steps and then the back door. And you open up the door, and she would literally peek around the corner, look down the steps, and then jet out the back door. Always. I'm like, I could never get her to go down the basement. I could never figure out why. Well, I figured out the hard way that my dog sees demons. When she does, I know it now. I know her behavior. When I came into this house, there was one in this house already waiting for me. Not that it knew I was coming, but it was already here waiting. Saw me when I came and walked through this house when I first moved here. Before I moved here, my friend was redoing this house and she showed me it. I remember walking through and I'm like, oh, great. And then I said to my other friend, I think I'm going to live there. I think I'm going to live there for a while. And it happened. But yeah, that's my story of demon attachments. That's how serious they are, how real they are. There was one in my basement. And, I was smudging one day and I was down the basement and I was behind the oil tanks. We had oil heat. And the oil tank was in my basement. And I remember going, and it was boxed in. And I remember smudging in the hole. I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm smudging in the hole for, but I'm smudging in the hole. Well, it just so happens that's where the thing hit all the time, back behind the oil heater. Which, again, we cleared that, killed that off, and made sure the house was cleared for the new people that moved in. When I came here, Spirit told me I wasn't allowed to move any of my stuff in until I did the clearing here. And it wasn't just a smudging. It includes shamanic ceremony, journeying, and identifying. And there was a ghost in here that I had to cross over as well. His name was Paul. He was fun. But yeah, that's really important to me to share this story and share to people that, especially people with addictions, people with mental illness, it's important that you do the work on yourself. And part of that work is having energy work done. And Reiki is a wonderful thing. And people are like, oh, I get Reiki done, or I do Reiki. That's all wonderful and all, but Reiki is not energy work. It's not like healing energy work. It's giving energy. It's a universal energy that flows through the Reiki practitioner into the person. You're not a Reiki healer. So people that say they're a Reiki healer drives me nuts. You're not a Reiki healer. You are a Reiki practitioner. Reiki practitioners are attuned to the energy. I am a level 3 and I do Jikiden Reiki, but I am not a Reiki healer. That is just a misconception and somebody that doesn't really know what they're talking about. You are a practitioner. The Reiki does the healing. Whereas shamanic healing work is different. The shaman, the person that's doing the shamanic energy work, so to speak, they're doing the healing work. They're working through ceremony. So that's the difference. So finding somebody that does, I'm all about the shamanic energy work. And you got to watch, because a lot of people use the word shaman, and my friends that do shamanic energy work will not tell you they're a shaman. They will not call themselves a shaman. They do shamanic energy work. From what I learned, a true shaman comes from usually South America or places like that. And they are chosen usually by their grandfather or great-grandfather. There's certain things that happen, and I'll tell that story another day. Hopefully I'll get Freddie Puma on here one day. I've been reaching out to him. I haven't heard from him. I'll have to try to do that again from Peru and get him to come on and tell the story and how he was chosen by his I think it was his great-grandfather. And it wasn't him. Spirit showed the sign, and then his great-grandfather said, it's time for you to learn. It's kind of very fascinating. This whole thing's very fascinating. And I hope you found it fascinating. But if anybody, you have anything with addiction, know people or people that are wanting to finally kick that out of their lives and out of their systems. Again, getting energy work done, getting off that medication first, and having a process, having a system. Mine was a 7-day process. That was actually a 30-day process. The first one with Dr. Yi, and that was the worst. And then I learned from going back a year later and then coming back off again, which was nothing as bad as the first time in 2016. It was 2017? I don't even remember it, but it's been over 2 years. And again, the thought doesn't cross my mind because I learned a new process of getting off that medication with no withdrawal, or 95 to 100% no withdrawal, how to reprogram my brain on how to do it correctly. And one day, sometime in the next year or two, I will be able to utilize that program for others in the centers that we create, which is going to be exciting. But for anybody, doesn't matter what the addiction is, energy work, a good psychotherapist, not the kind of therapist you go to and they write everything down, right? And then they look at you towards the end and they're like, how's that make you feel? And then they write again. And then they say, oh, sorry, your time's up, and they send you on your way. That is just the biggest waste of money and time ever. Psychotherapist is like a life coach / therapist. They give you advice. They help you. They give you steps through your life and help guide you as a life coach / therapist. They're the best. Everybody should have one. Handy, not all the time. I don't use one now, but if the time comes up where I feel like I need to utilize it again, I know I'll be calling her again for that. But everybody should have that. Everybody should have that. You have to work on the energy. You have to work on the emotion in order to conquer the physical. And then there's the physical. You got to start exercising, find a new addiction, a good, healthy addiction, eating healthy, paying attention to, doing yoga, meditation, all of it. It's all very, very important to your process of healing. And that's for everything, even diseases. There's a whole system with diseases. Like Louise Hay wrote, diseases have to do with emotional causes, which again, emotional causes all stem from energy. And then traumatic experiences, things that happen to us as children that we don't even remember because we block it out. The prime time of programming our futures is between the age of birth and 4 years old. Most of us don't remember beyond even 5 years old. So that's the thing. So there you have it. There you have my story. Wahoo. Hey, YouTubers, thank you so much for watching. I hope this inspires you. I wish nothing more than to inspire you as a bringer of light, love, and truth. You can catch the rest of this interview in full with questions posed to me by my patrons on my Awakening Your Spirit community on Patreon. Check it all out in the links below and be sure to subscribe below. Until the next time, I wish you an amazingly magical and joyful day, week, and beyond. I'll see you next time. Spiritman Joseph signing off.